Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, the channel where we are making a computer role-playing game using the free program Twine and the SugarCube format for Twine. In my last video, I demonstrated a system for buying and selling with friendly monsters, and I remarked that it was quite a simple system and that, for example, you couldn't haggle or try to steal from the monsters. You just had to pay the prices or get the prices that they had decided. And having said that, I decided to add those options as well. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate in this video. Now, there's no new commands or types of commands used in this video. It's just demonstrating a system, one way to do a system that you might want to do in your own game. So let's make an elf character this time, because we're trying to get, so I can demonstrate stuff, we're trying to get sort of somewhat high intelligence and somewhat high charisma. So I'll just cheat a little bit, and that's probably okay. You'll see why in a minute. So we come to this, we come to a settlement again. Let's approach them with an informal approach, and they are impressed with our high charisma and offer to trade with us. Now I'm just going to write down these numbers so that I can discuss them. In the left-hand column, we have the numbers that they will charge us to buy particular spices, and then in the right-hand column, these are the prices that they will pay for particular spices. As always, these numbers are always higher than these numbers. Let's say that we haggle to decrease the buying price, and that does indeed work. And we find that the numbers have gone down by, it should be between 1 and 3. But let's say that we're not, actually that does allow me to demonstrate what I wanted. In the last one there, it was 12 to buy and 9 to sell, and Ginger has gone down to 9, but we also see that this one has gone down as well. And the reason for that is because if this price were ever higher than this price, you could just buy a thing and then sell it straight back to them and make a profit. And you could just do that infinitely, because I don't apply, there's a time penalty for haggling, which is important because time is a resource, or lamp oil is a resource specifically, and if it goes down to 0, you die. But there's no time penalty for buying and selling. So if these numbers ever got higher, there would be a flaw in the game which would allow a player to just get sort of as much money as they wanted. So because this one's gone down to 9, rather than this be 9, it's been pushed down to 8. And the opposite is also true. If we haggle to increase the selling price, there's no reason to do that because we don't have anything to sell. But let's just do it to demonstrate. Well, in that case, we got into a fight. But let's. Okay, so in this case, we having cheated a bit, we spend 45 minutes haggling. We roll using the average of intelligence and charisma. Our intelligence is 12 and our charisma is 16, so that's right. If the average was something 0.5, it would round up, by the way. But we can see here that now Ginger has increased. Sorry, now the selling price of Ginger has increased to 12, and as a result, the buying price has gone up to 13. So normally, you wouldn't haggle to decrease the buying price and haggle to increase the selling price at the same time, because they sort of work against each other. You could do it if perhaps you wanted to buy one spice and sell a different spice. You could also do it if the two prices were close together and you wanted to make a small profit. You might say, all right, I'll buy this pepper for 12, then I'll haggle to increase the selling price, and hopefully this will go over 12, and then I can sell it at a profit. And I've allowed that because every time you haggle, there's a time penalty. So if you can make a little profit by doing that, that's fine. You're still sort of risking a resource. It doesn't create a problem where you can get an unlimited amount of money. And that might be worth doing if you had a lot of money and then a large amount of spices. You could buy sort of a huge amount of spices and sell them at a profit and make a large profit. But let's say that we've finished trading. We finished trading and we want to try and just steal instead. Click on steal. And this time we use the average of intelligence and dexterity, which is 13. But we didn't roll staggeringly well. And our attempt was noticed and we managed to get away, but we didn't get any spices. And if we had set this up so that the settlements were permanent and we could come back to them later, which I haven't done yet, but will be doing very soon, we would find that trying to steal and being noticed also makes the settlement hostile. They won't want anything to do with us if we tried to steal from them. So that's not all the options. There's quite a lot of different things that can happen. You can end up being beaten up, or of course you can succeed, or you can what else can happen? Well, there's other things that I'm going to put in as well, but let's look at the code for now. So I'll X out of that and we'll get into the code. It's fairly straightforward. The differences are mostly going to be here, and then there's there's two new pages, steal and haggle, and these three between them are probably going to have most of the changes that we'll be talking about today, although there is a new page up here as well. So let's look at trade 2. We've got this long table, which I've discussed in my previous video, so I won't go through again. That table just prints the prices, and some of the numbers are links if you wish to buy or sell. But this is the new thing. We have the links to steal, haggle, and also haggle, because they're treated in quite similar ways. The way we differentiate what you're trying to do is this variable HS. HS is set to either 1 or 2, 1 to increase the selling price and 2 to decrease the buying price, which won't be relevant until you succeed in most cases. But let's go and look at how that works, and then when I've gotten through that, I'll have a look at steal as well. So we go to haggle. I've just got a note to myself there that says that which one's which of HS's. So first of all we roll to see how much lamp oil we take up, or /time we take up doing this. It's 15 minutes, half an hour, or 3/4 of an hour. And if we run out of lamp oil, alas, we are killed. But let's say it isn't. Let's say we still have lamp oil. Well, we set Z to haggle and go to roll and add. Now, I've already shown you how Sneak uses dexterity minus size, and all I've done is put in a couple of new options as well as the names of attributes. So steal, which uses the average of intelligence and dexterity, and haggling, which uses the average of intelligence and charisma. You might notice that I've also put in this, if Y is 1, well, it's an automatic failure and you get whatever the worst possible result is. It sets the total result to be minus 100. And then if Y is 20, it sets the total to be 100 and counts it as automatic success, and otherwise goes through adding attributes and stuff, which if you roll a 1 or a 20, the attributes don't matter. You're considered to just succeed or fail regardless, because there's always a chance of both. So haggling just uses the average of math.round, which is to say whatever's within these brackets, turn it into a whole number, rounding up or down depending on whether it's closer to the higher or lower number, with 0.5 exactly being rounded up. And AV2 and AV5 are, of course, intelligence and charisma. So going back to haggle, we will end up with X, which is the total of the roll and the average of the two attributes. And if it's over 21, then we've succeeded. And what that means depends on HS, which is to say whether we're trying to increase the prices or lower the prices, or increase the selling prices or lower the buying prices. And then we have very similar code depending on what HS is. In both cases, it's a for loop, which goes up to sn.length minus 1. That is all of the spices that we have, in this case 5. We set the SS array, increase it by 1 to 3. The SB array, make it math.max, which is to say the highest out of any of these options, the highest of SBZ or SSZ plus 1. So, in other words, SBZ becomes the higher of its current value or SSZ plus 1. And similarly, we have a similar for loop. This is if we're trying to lower the buying prices. We reduce SB by a random number from 1 to 3. Minus equals, as I've said before, means the variable equals itself minus whatever's on the other side of the equal. So, for example, set Z minus equals 7 means set Z to be Z minus 7. Similarly, plus equals means add that amount. So set Z to be equal to Z plus 7. Because when you're dealing with attributes, you're often altering the current value. It's often the current value plus or minus some amount, and so they built in plus equals and minus equals as ways to do that more quickly. And then we set SSZ to be math.min, which is like the opposite of math.max. Instead of math.max is out of all of the numbers here, choose the highest, and math.min is out of all of the numbers here, choose the lowest. In this case, we only have two numbers. They are SSZ, that is the current value of SSZ, or SBZ minus 1. In other words, set SSZ to be whichever's smaller of its current value, or SBZ minus 1. And then we include trade 2. If we had failed, and I did fail, but I sort of wanted to show you stuff, so I cheated until we succeeded. But if we had failed with our haggling, there are 3 things that can happen, and I've got a structure such similar to how I showed you in a previous video, where we have, if random 1 to 3 is 1, do this thing. Otherwise, if random 1 to 2 is 1, otherwise do the final one. Reducing that range by 1 each time, and of course there's no real reason to have random 1 to 1, because that would always just be 1, so that would always happen. If you decrease that by 1 each time, that makes each option equally likely. So it might be there's no penalty other than the waste of time, or the creatures are exasperated and refuse to trade with you anymore, or you actually get into a fight. And I was going to add another option where they trick you into buying or selling at a bad price, but I haven't done that one yet. I'll do it later. So that's how haggling works. You spend time and you roll against the relevant attributes, and if you're lucky, you can change the prices to your advantage. But you might want to try a more direct route and just steal instead. Perhaps you don't have any money to trade, for example. So in this case, we set Z to be steal, and we go to roll an ad, and steal tells the computer that we want to use the average of intelligence and dexterity, because you're sort of how light-fingered and nimble you are is going to help, but also are you smart enough to, distract the shopkeeper and sort of keep an eye on escape routes and kind of do several things at once and not get caught. So that's why I decided to add intelligence in there. And if you succeed, that is if x is over 21, then you choose a random spice, which is what random 1 to sn.length minus 1 does, and then you perform the equivalent of rolling 2 four-sided dice, and that's the number of measures of that particular spice that you get. So so if x is over 21, you've succeeded in stealing, but there's a distinction there where if x is over 24, you manage to steal it and you're not noticed. Whereas if it's over 21 but not over 24, i.e. it's 22, 23 or 24, you are noticed but manage to get away. And in the game as it is so far, that doesn't have any effect because we're only modelling the individual encounter. But in a proper game where the settlements are permanent and where you can come back to a settlement that you've interacted with before, there is a difference because if you're noticed, the settlement will become hostile. If you steal from them, they don't sort of want to deal with you anymore. And then if we haven't got over 21 but we have got over 18, well, you managed to get away but you didn't steal anything. The settlement will become hostile and you will be probably sent in a random direction because you're not doing your preferred getaway route. You're panicking and you're improvising and who knows where you end up, sort of thing. And the worst option is that you're noticed and they beat you and send you back the way you came. And in that case, we go to wound. And I'll show you wound briefly. Wound just means we roll a 6-sided die, or we do the equivalent of that. We reduce constitution, that's what AV4 is, by that amount that we rolled. If we don't have any constitution left, we're dead, and we set this special flag DD to 1. And then if exclamation mark DD means if not DD, which means if DD hasn't been assigned a value yet, because DD is only set to 1 if you're dead. So if not DD effectively means if the player isn't dead. And what will happen there is that the settlement will become hostile and the player will be sent back the way they came in particular. So when I expand this system to be long-term or more like a proper game, one of the things I'll need to do is keep track of where the player has come from, because there are certain options. This is one of them, but there are other options as well where you have to go back. Specifically, you have to go back the way you came. You don't get a choice. So that is one way in which you can have the option of haggling and or thievery. One more thing I should say, that in the longer term game, haggling is only for that one encounter. In other words, the prices will be what they are at the beginning. You can haggle to change them, but if you leave the settlement and come back, the effect of your haggling will be undone. They'll be back to how they were. So you have to sort of haggle anew each time. I thought that was more realistic. As with anything else, we'll see how it goes. But that is a system for haggling and stealing. Makes has a few more options other than just paying the price that is that is randomly generated, and it makes trading a little bit less of a, okay, this is the shop part. This is the bit where you just sort of buy as much of such and such as you have. And sometimes I find when there are shops in games of this type, it's just, here's a price list and you can click on stuff to buy it. And you sort of go, well, we're in a medieval or ancient world. Why don't I have the option to haggle? Why don't I have the option to steal? My character might be a thief, but for some reason I never get the option to steal from this particular shop. It feels a bit weird, as if it's like a separate system rather than being part of the game world. So I wanted to have that option and make it feel more like it's something that can be interacted with the same way that you can interact with anything else. Anyway, you may agree or not, but I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.